and we're recording on a truly Apollo 13-esque manner. We've done this once before. I think it was episode 40, but screen recording on Skype using calling Britt through my laptop, which is actually calling through my phone. So a bit of a circus, circus act, right? It's the juggling chainsaws and balancing china plates on a unicycle. But hey, we did.
The universe said we can start getting our way. We said no way.
We just said fuck you. You know, that's on Apollo 13. They didn't say, well, maybe it won't work. And you may be saying to yourself, but Tommy, this isn't anywhere nearly as heroic or as important as Apollo 13. To which I say, au contraire, it is. It is. This is, I would say, more important. You know, I'm not sure what is more important than this, actually. I think all of the world that rests on this episode. But Britt looks very confused at my proposition for that fact, but it's not an opinion, it's a fact. The world hinges on this, and I can't explain why. It's classified. But for everybody listening, Britt was on episode 16, the OG. This is episode 369. Which is, and I have known Britt since about a month before 9/11, which may seem like an odd timestamp, but I don't know. It kind of makes August, because that's when I started OLA in Atlanta. I've been friends with Britt since 2001. I've gone to his house many of times in middle school and shot airsoft guns at each other and at others, and played Halo 1 on LAN parties. The OG. So point is, for everybody listening, I've known Britt for a long time, and we last spoke about 3D printing and hydroponics and shit, and but now Britt and I spoke a couple years ago, and you told me an interesting story that I can't really retell, so with that, I'm just gonna pass it over to you, and it's all yours.
Basically, it was a hard one to remember, but it's kind of what made me a strange person, I suppose, is knowing that there's a little bit more out to the universe. And the personal fact I've had to face is that I'm adopted, and I came from a family that wasn't doing so well at the time. My birth mom tried to commit suicide and tried to overdose on all sorts of chemicals in order to induce that. And I guess this would be the first point that life acted my being, my physical being, in a manner enough to stir me into a conscious state. And when I was in this state, I remember sort of just darkness, and then an out-of-body experience began to happen. And I remember just seeing the world around me and exiting it, and then entering another darkness. At the end of this other darkness was a massive amount of energy and light. And when you were in the midst of this, you just became like you're floating down a river, completely relaxed. Everything is right in the world. You don't have any worries. And it just sort of a moment and said, I could stay here for a while and make a decision. Do I want to come back to the world, or do I want to stay there? I made the decision to come back. And it sort of grew a little bit of information, more knowledge about it, and for choosing to come back. I see that I'm choosing to be able to leave it. Knowing full well it's told you, hey, what the heck, life, there's nothing easy about it. I'm still making that choice. Like, it's told me about myself and about parts of myself that wouldn't exist until I'm 30 plus years old. Which is a weird thing to know. But then I remember coming back and just kind of reacted into body, and then the real life begins. But there was a lot to take away from, and I guess I'd have to let you dissect it bit by bit with a few questions.
Yeah.
It's a very personal thing. I mean, that's ultimately what it's about.
So I remember you telling me this. I think it's probably 2017 or 2018. I had just gotten my sorry ass dumped, and I was reaching out to Britt, and as we do in life, when shit hits the fan, you go, or not really. I wouldn't even say when shit hits the fan. I would say when life kind of just shits all over you, because shit hitting the fan, there's almost like this excitement about that phrase. Shit hitting the fan is like society's collapsing, grab your guns, hit the highway, right? It's like, it's this illusion of, the bug out bag, gotta get out. So it's not shit hitting the fan. It's more so when life shits on you, when you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, man, this is really where I am in life right now. Just kind of at the bottom. And I felt, pretty down, was living home and, didn't have anything going for me. And I was just like, what the fuck am I even doing? And I found, at least for me, in moments in life where that happens, you always find solace in talking to those that you've known for a long time, right? Not like a friend that you've had for a month, but you go back to someone you're like, I've known this person since like before I had braces. Like, I was friends with this person for a couple years before I jerked off for the first time. Like, like someone that you've known for so long that it's just like, their flaws and they know yours, and you truly know them as a human. And that always seems to be the case. And I reached out to Britt, and I had remembered from middle school, I knew you were adopted, and I think we had talked about that one or two times while like playing Halo or something. But the point is the point is when I reached out to Britt, and basically it was just like, I feel like I'm at fucking rock. Probably hadn't talked to you in like 10 years. Fuck if I know. And, well, not that long, because we graduated in 2000. It's not important. Point is I reached out to Britt and we spoke, and Britt was like, man, like, and I remember you telling me, you're like, I remember parts of my life like before I was born. And you're like, I've never really told anyone this. Or you're like, I've never told you this. And you're like, because you're like, it's weird. It's hard to like tell people that. And this was around the time I first started opening up about the fact that, so I lost my brother to suicide on April 15th, 2014. The night before, like a couple hours before, I was down in Georgia. I was 600 miles away. And I like woke up from a nightmare that I was basically like hovering over his shoulder. I was watching it like third person. I was watching him basically prepare for it. And I woke up, and my girlfriend woke me up at the time, and because she was like, your heart's beating so fast. I've told this story on this podcast before. Your heart's beating so fast, I thought you were having a nightmare. So she woke me up, and I was like, I was, and I didn't really say anything about it because I was just like, it's just a nightmare. And later found out, the next day it happened, and it happened. I later now know from like going through like his last text to other members of the family, I can now piece it together, and what I saw was actually happening. And it's very hard for me to tell that story because I'm Mr. Biology, I'm pre-med, I'm all about science. But it was like there is no, oh, maybe it was a coincidence. You don't have a dream about something. That can only happen once. You can't lose someone to suicide twice. It can only happen once. And it wasn't even like, well, I had this dream and 5 years later it happened. No, I had this dream of what I was viewing, of him prepping for it. And the next day it happened. And then I actually now know that the time I was having the dream was actually the same time he was prepping. So it was like streaming. It was like live streaming. I was watching, and I don't know what that was. And it took me a while. I remember I finally told my mom about it, and I had never told anyone about it. And I remember I told my mom and my like therapist at the time, and then told my dad, and then I've opened up more and more about it. But I remember telling that to Britt. And maybe I told you that first, and then you told me your story. But the point of all of this is like, it was kind of an opening up about like, yeah, man, there are weird things that cannot be explained. And they are certainly, you can't write them off as, you were just on acid. It's like, no, this is and it's not something you can brush off either. It shapes who you are as a person. That fundamentally changed my view on the world. Like, it is, if that was connected, that who else am I connected to? How many others are connected to someone, and maybe they won't know until that person's on the verge of death.
Every time I think about you, you pop up. So
but that's also a thing, though, right? Is like, why the fuck does that happen? And what I always point to, and Britt, obviously, as you know, I never shut up, so you got to throw some elbows if you want to get a word in. It's but the Barry Dinger show. That's Britt.
No, I'm thinking of all in and have a lot for myself.
But what is kind of weird is when we were in 6th grade, our mutual friend David and I began our own talk show. Instead of Jerry Springer, it was called the Barry Dinger Show, and it was the Barry Dinger Show. and Britt was security. Britt was, so me and David would put our desks together, and Britt would stand next to it with like a ruler. That was, I don't know, his club, and we would do the Barry Dinger Show, and Britt was like backstage security. I mean, it was 3 of us with a cumulative age of 30, like, and, you know, everyone else was, you know, eating Ritz crackers and had braces. Again, this is like 2002. This is pre-Iraq. But we used to joke that we had a talk show called The Barry Dinger Show, and it's very odd kind of sitting here realizing now I'm sitting here with a microphone talking to you on my show. but point is I always point to this. I've had on the podcast several times, probably 20 plus times now, Dale Comstock. Dale's the youngest ever member of Delta Force, worked for the CIA for 10 years, is as reputable as he's a living legend. I've talked to other tier 1 operators, and they all know who he is. Dale's a living James Bond. Point is he's a very clean-cut guy. He's not like Britt and myself, where we talk about psychedelics and smoking. This is a guy that's never touched pot in his life. But he has stories of, you know, in the middle of the night, you know, waking up and thinking of a friend that he hasn't talked to in a decade. And it turns out that, you know, he'll find out a couple hours later that guy was killed that night in an operation in Yemen. And it was like, why does that happen on other sides of the world?
Instances just release an amount of energy, and the release of that energy, it can attach onto other things that it's been attached to in the past, like people. We're conscious quantum energy. We're a field, like massive amounts of fields of these energies, and when something important things happen, you become if it's something that's been important to you.
And it's
even people you haven't talked to. Like, I know I've thought about my elders, and they'll be deep in my heart for a couple of days, and then you come to find out, like, that was them saying goodbye. Like after that, they're gone. Things like that.
Dude, my grandmother passed away in 2018, and I swear to God. And I had been seeing, because I've been driving up to New York every week. This is when, after I moved home in 2016, I was going to see a therapist every week in New York, so I was driving up every week. So I got to see my grandmother a lot, actually, before, for like 2 years. I take it as a blessing. I got to see her every week. I hadn't seen her that regularly since I was a kid. But the point is, you know, she was getting up there in years, and her health was definitely fragile, but she was making a rebound. And I remember I was at my little brother's house at the time in DC, I think, and I remember I had a dream that night. I had a dream that my grandmother was on the moon, and I had a suit on, but like her like glass bubble broke, and so she was having trouble breathing. And I was like, I kept trying to like get her air and stuff, and I had this horrible dream. And I remember I woke up the next morning, and this was like a couple days before Christmas, 2018. And me and my little brother had this, like, we had a couple days. I was going to go up to his place. We were going to drink for a couple days and then both drive up to New Jersey together. We always do Christmas at my aunt's house. Just whatever. But I remember I woke up and he was like, yo, like, we need to go up to New Jersey today. And I was like, why? I was like why? Like, we have like 2 days. And he was like, Mimi is like actively like dying. Like the hospice nurse was like, hey, like, it's not if, it's she's going, and she probably has another 12 to 18 hours left. If you can get family to come. So, you know, obviously we sped up and we were there with her, and I remember she was they had her on like a ton of morphine, so it was fine. Didn't feel any pain, but she had to be on oxygen because morphine suppresses your respiratory system. But I remember she was being completely fragile. I mean, she couldn't talk. I do remember her like grabbing my hand, but like I was just, and it wasn't sad like my brother was sad. She was I believe 88, perhaps 86. Lived an absolutely wonderful life. I have so many memories of her, and it was just old age, right? There's a sadness in that, but it's not the same as your 27-year-old brother killing himself, right? There's not the same tragedy, right? It's much more expected. It's like 88, like it's you get old and you go. But even that was something where it was like, I remember I went up to my mom and I was like, Mom, I had a dream last night of like Mimi, and I was like, if she was on the bed, I was like, the point was like she couldn't breathe, and my mom was like, well, she was having like acute respiratory failure, and I just remember I was like, what is going on? Because I had that dream, and then she knew about my dream with John. I remember she was like, Tom, it's your gift, and I was like, I would say it's a curse, but okay, I agree to disagree. but I was like, and so. But it's like this had happened twice now, and then like I understand the sort of like criticism of it. It's like, well, how many dreams have you had where that didn't happen? And the thing is like I haven't had a dream where that hasn't happened. It's just not something I talk, because it's not like, hey, I had a dream that someone's. It's like I don't want to talk about it. It's fucking weird. It's weird. It's scary.
I was going through a lot out of middle school, and I was kind of starting to go and saying lie. Like,
yeah. How do you tell people this? Like,
and not just metaphorical reality dreams where it's like the glass break, but literal 100% for action, moment for moment, like dreams. This shit's happening.
Yeah,
and it's like I'm caught and like stream. Like these actions have to be active, a causal nexus or a death. An event that happens.
Yeah.
A deja vu or somewhere between all three. But I mean, it has to do with this energy pass through time and why it connects to you in certain points in time, what makes them more important. But
yeah, it's
a timelessness to whatever's beyond the physical.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's the one with Mimi was metaphorical, where it was the glass breaking. But then, whereas like my brother John, I was like, for sake of privacy, I won't go into like just from like where we live and family. But I mean, I like recreated it, and I was like, it was basically like there was a quadcopter following him with a GoPro, like second by second, like we're literally where he moved throughout the house, and it was like. That wasn't even like, oh, what did it represent? I was like, no, I like watched like a live feed 600 miles away. What the fuck? And it's something that like you can't just go, well, everyone has these experiences where, we all have experiences where you kind of question reality. But it's like what Ram Dass, the late great Ram Dass, would say. He's like, back when I was a Harvard professor and people would tell me about their spiritual experiences, I would always say like, that's nice and you should keep an open mind. He's like, and then, I'd kind of roll my eyes to myself. And then later on, he was like, after like living in the Himalayas for 10 years and like working with gurus, and he was like, I was now watching in like real time, I was watching actual miracles. Like I was watching like, and this is Ram Dass's words as a Harvard professor. He's like, I'm watching this Buddhist monk meditate and he's levitating. And I'm like, who the fuck at MIT is going to believe this? And he's like, I don't know. And frankly, he's like, and you may be listening to me right now saying, Ram Dass, I can't verify that unless I see that with my own eyes. And to which he would say, correct. So don't take my word for it. He was like, because I certainly can't convince you, just like I couldn't have been convinced before I saw it. So everything Britt and I are saying, you may be listening to this saying, are you guys spinning a yarn? Are you trying to, get a popular podcast topic going? To which I say, you can't know until it happens to you, and I don't expect anyone to take my word for it. I think you'd be stupid to take my word for it. Because how do you not know Britt and I are just pulling stories out of our ass?
We're not the first people.
No.
So it won't be last. I mean, This is definitely something there have been people who've been scientifically trying to document it, even There's books, The Gateway Experience. Even the CIA took a huge on in time. That one. I mean, humans are quantum creatures.
Yeah.
And when this 3-dimensional, I think we're bit by bit going to evolve into having those experiences more and more. But part of us are conscious of every.
Do you think maybe it's like as well? I also can say Dr. Eben Alexander, the literal. I mean, I don't know how much more credible than you can get than a literal Harvard brain surgeon, like the head of neurosurgery at Harvard. That's about as tippy top as you can get. He wrote the book Proof of Heaven when he fell into a coma for 7 days and experienced heaven. I've had him on this podcast 3 times. He's a cool fucking dude. But I mean, there's a guy that is as like a Dale Comstock. He's not me and Britt. He's this incredibly credible person, and he's saying no, zero hesitation. He's like, yep, I experienced heaven, and this is what happened, and the mind is actually just a filter for the universe or the mind at large, per Aldous Huxley. We're all quantum creatures. We're in this world. We chose this incarnation to learn as old souls. We are actually eternally old. Every life we take is merely a new college course, and right now Britt's learning what it's like to do 3D printing with a beard, and right now Tommy's a guy in a red sweatshirt, and he's experiencing Podcast 101, and really what these lives are nothing more than just a semester at the eternal college of becoming a god. And that's a guy that just...
Earth,
yeah.
I mean, the way I see it is consciousness don't even know what true heaven is. We're still trying to figure that out, and any concept of it is just something we're still evolving with here on planet Earth.
Concept,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just continuously reincarnating until we find the right way to do this. I mean, like, as above, so below, or that saying goes, you know, as we're an evolving species, our evolution is representative of the collective evolution. We were just a being 10,000 years ago, just in the mud, whatever, and now we're inspired and to create civilization, to ourselves up from this state and do something different. And rather than doing the same thing we had been doing, and bit by bit, we're moving forward. And now I believe we're actually getting close to figuring out and help grow past fear of eternity. And I think it's like the creators.
You said fear of eternity?
Yes.
What do you mean? What do you mean? But sorry, your audio's been chopping in and out. You said we're growing past fear of eternity, or
yeah.
What is fear of eternity? Because I feel like most people. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting. I feel like the big thing now is like we want radical life extension so that we can be around for eternity, and you're saying fear of eternity.
We fear eternity. It's why we, as a collective consciousness, is a realm that has time.
Okay.
It's a relativity, and it's an exact opposite of what original state of consciousness is. And things about the physical world are built around things being the exact opposite of the way that it was before creation, before physical matter, before any of that. Because the Creator being the very first thing, the very first everything, when it looked out into eternity, what do you think it saw? It saw nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, eternal thing. It has a way, but it is the be-all. So when it became conscious and it stared out into oblivion, it had to figure out a way to fill eternity with.
Yeah.
What does it fill everything? What does it do with it?
Yeah.
And this partitioning of the consciousness down into a minutia of itself and experiencing itself and trillions of different experiences, figuring out what is good, what is right, what is wrong, is all part of this. And I mean,
it's I think of when I would make like a Photoshop or something, and I'd get like my iPad and I would make whatever. whether it's a design I want to make or whether it's a Photoshop of like World War II or whatever. I like to put fighter jets and World War II images. I think I always love putting an F-22 above Okinawa or something. But what you always do though is like, as you're creating this image, it's like first I always need just kind of like this background. So I'm like, okay, I know it's going to be a black and white image. So the very first thing I'll do is I'll kind of just take like a gray palette and I'll be like, there's the background, there's the whole thing. And then I'll kind of take a couple images of the ocean and kind of blend them together. I'm like, there's the distant ocean, here's Okinawa, and then I'll start filling it in. But you always kind of have to throw this shit at, I put black sheets on either side because it was like, first I just kind of I need a background, right? And it kind of seems like what would the original source, what would it do when all of a sudden, it's like what Duncan Trussell said. And I remember listening to this in like 2012, and he was like, it's like when it first becomes conscious at whatever point in it, there isn't even time. All of a sudden, this thing just wakes up. It is. I am. He was like, what I think, we like to think of it as this like all-knowing God. He was like, I think this thing freaked out like a child the first time the child fell and hurt its elbow. There is nothing. There's no differentiation. There's no language. And it just goes, what the fuck? And it just explodes into a trillion. Sorry, you're telling me to whisper?
Oh, no, I'm just thinking the first thing it wants to do.
I thought you were telling me to whisper. I was like, what? I'm sorry. No. He was like, this thing is like, what the fuck? It doesn't know, and it just shatters into a trillion pieces, and now you experience life as a girl in China, or a farmer in Europe, or Tommy and Britt in 2021, or you're Elon Musk, or it's 50,000 years in the future, and you're colonizing Pluto, or whatever. And it's almost like it threw all this shit out. It's like it took all these Lego pieces and threw them out. And over eternity, it's kind of putting them together. And it's like, oh, this is actually a really cool Lego set. I can build this toy. But at first, it didn't know. It was just...
It wants to create a conscious mirror for itself to help figure all of this out.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be the first thing you want to do is have a buddy that's like you to figure shit out with. I mean...
Yeah. So it splits itself into two, right? At the very least, there's two.
More and more over time, but over time, this consciousness needs to find another means of addressing all of the in the millennia they were just floating around as nothingness and just splitting into two, creating new, but needing to test them. I mean, the first, what I believe was the first creation of it is what we think is it's a realm that is an immediate response to what you're holding inside of you. Are you good? Are you bad? It's the eternal giant mirror deep self. It can be a cakewalk or it can be damnation. It's whatever you make of it, whatever's inside of you. But and I feel like after that, and after there was somewhat means of in the chaos and the souls, they still needed more. They still more because there's still timelessness. Mm-hmm. There was still understanding of what all the meant. I mean, if there's no pain, is there good or evil? Like, if there's no physical sensation, what is good? What is evil at that point? They didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's all still something that's being quite literally beaten in and out of us on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's we're here to learn something. Like, and I don't know what. Part of me thinks it can never figure it out, because how could it figure out? Because it can't truly ever step out of the system, because to be conscious is part of the system. So you can, right? The camera can never record itself, unless of course you get a mirror, right? Because the camera is the flashlight can never illuminate itself. It shines. You can't bite your own teeth. That is biting, right? A knife can't be so sharp it cuts itself. It is sharpness. So it can never, unless of course it makes copies of itself, and then it can look. You go, oh, you could bite someone else's teeth. That would be weird and perhaps your fetish, but like, you bite someone else's teeth, you could cut another knife with a knife. But part of me now thinks there's that, I think it's from the Bhagavad Gita, it might not be, I don't know, it's some ancient text. I'm clearly an uncultured swine, but it's the quote, before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. That's right. You're just kind of a burdened beast doing your daily chores. And it says after enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water, because you wake up and then you go, oh, and then you just find bliss in daily activities. And I think of like how hammered down with routine I was in college, waking up every morning, just 4.0 student, med school, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a couple years off where I thought I was, it was right after my brother died, and I was like, I'm just going to take this time to figure out life. And ultimately what I concluded was, up until creating this podcast in 2019, is that I realized my bliss is having like an insurmountable job that takes me every day to do, and every day I get a little closer, but I know I'll never get it. Right? Like, what would be, who's the biggest YouTube channel in the world? PewDiePie with like 100 million subscribers. So what if I set my goal to be 7 billion subscribers? I can work at that for the rest of my life. And there's a peace in that. I wake up every morning. I got to exercise so my head's clear so I can talk quickly on the podcast, because if I don't, I'm groggy. I got to meditate. Got to put on clean clothes, shower, shave, comb my hair over. I got to do some meditating and breathing exercises to kind of clear up the existential fog. And then I come in, I do the podcast, I finish it, I compress it, I upload it. And by the time it's about finished to go, I'm nice and tired, and it's time to go to bed. And I wake up the next day and I do it again. And I found that there is indescribable peace in just being happily occupied. And that's at 30 years old, meditating every day for 12 years. That is my latest thesis on existence, is to just be happily occupied, always knowing that it's just a game and that I'm just a fractured consciousness here for a little while, but I don't get lost in it. You know, if it's Grand Theft Auto, sure, you might be, do I live in a video game? But after a while you're like, fuck it, just get the fighter jet and just go fly between buildings. Find happiness. And I've been thinking of this more, is like, you know, it's like, you know, it's like when people, like, I don't really drink anymore, I don't really smoke anymore, I will on occasion, but like, you know, people say to those that when I was drinking every day and smoking every day, I was without a doubt escaping. I was getting away from something, the pain of thinking about what happened to my brother, the pain of realizing that my life is spiraling downwards. I was escaping something. Now if I do it, it's a celebration. It's like, oh, I just broke 1,000 subscribers, I haven't drank in a year, like, sure, I'll go have a couple beers with Matt, right? But then I've been thinking, is human life, is this just God not facing the existential terror of not knowing what it is? So does it roll up a nice fat blunt of human, and it rips it, and it lays back on its bed, and just like getting drunk or taking pills, it's like, you can take some Xanax and sure, your problems will go away, but you're going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to be here. But when you're really in pain, you don't give a shit, because all you want are those 12 hours of peace. Please, God, just give me some peace. I'll face tomorrow when it gets here. Is God taking a big rip of human, and the other gods are going, you're going to feel good for about 80 years, but then you're going to wake up and I don't give a shit. I'll wake up and I'll take another hit.
There's so many redundancies in consciousness not facing reality. It's the creator just trying to phase out for. And there's some parts of the consciousness where, like, hey, collect this. I've got something new. I've got my whole life sacrificing. Lifts the whole up and gives them more. I mean, there's a whole dynamic between the shut-off side and the side that's conscious, as hard as it can. There's a balance between the two. But, I mean, if I had one goal, it would be way harder to the creator and get to work.
Yeah.
Figure this out. As we see it every day. People who just want to shut down, who don't want to face these things. Even though, like, I mean, you the face your experiences, some of this, some of the reality that you couldn't explain. And I wish everybody would start to tune into these things, and the littlest things and the biggest things. And they'll start to see a much bigger picture and how their lives play a role in this big journey of growth through. Maybe some of them are doing it because they're afraid that the journey is going to come to an end one day.
It might be.
That's the journey. It's going to have to come to an end one day.
Yeah. It's, there's another, it's like, again, it's like drinking and smoking isn't always like I'm trying to hide from something. Like, I also drank and smoked in college when I was a 4.0 student with 8-pack abs, and it's because sometimes it was just fun to go get fucked up. Like, it's not always this sad, evil, oh, he's trying to hide from pain. Sometimes it's Friday night, you just did 2 weeks of studying OChem and genetics, you're 21, you're ready to get lit. And there's no more philosophy behind it than that. You're just getting lit for lit's sake. Like, so like at the end of the day, when I play video games, when I play Hitman or Grand Theft Auto, it's not, I'm just trying to hide from the no, it's like my life's awesome right now. I'm making money on a podcast. I'm moving out of my parents' house soon. I'm losing weight. I'm selling my own sweatshirts. I'm trying to. No one's buying them, but I'm selling my own sweatshirts, right? I get to hang out with friends on podcasts and do whatever I want. I still play video games at night. I'm not escaping anything. Sometimes it's just fun to be like, let's see how many cops I can kill with a machete before the SWAT team kills me. And there's no deeper purpose than that. It's not like you're mentally ill, you need to address this. Sometimes it's just fun to put on some Bose headphones, turn on a 4K TV, and go like, let's just slaughter some civilians in Grand Theft Auto. Like,
give yourself a new identity temporarily and you live it up.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be this logic behind why are you doing that. I don't know. This is fun, right? It's, when you jerk off, do you think about, is it, well, I don't want to know what you think about, any of the listeners. I don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
I don't want to know. But it's like, are you thinking about like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm releasing dopamine and all these different neural pathways, and that's allowing me to ignore the fact that there's a pandemic ravaging the country and that the elite are slowly getting more and more wealth and that the rest of us are going to die off as they turn into a breakaway civilization and we eventually devolve into a technocratic dystopia? Or are you just like, oh man, I'm going to jerk off? Like it doesn't, it's not always you're trying to, sometimes right? Is it, are you escaping some childhood trauma by eating a Big Mac? Or is it just like, I haven't had a Big Mac in a year, I just smoked some pot, I want a Big Mac? It's not always, sometimes it's just you do it just to, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm just gonna, I guess, change things up as much as possible lately. That's been my thing. Mm-hmm. Just trying not to get stuck, so that everything does kind of feel as much novel as possible. It's fresh.
Yeah.
The last year has been just doing the same pattern every day.
Yeah, and you gotta step out of that, right? It's when you're taking like you're taking like a yo-yo. If you're spinning it, eventually you've been getting it going so fast that you don't even really have to try anymore. And it's like, start going in the other direction. Just get a little friction, right? Try a new video game, right? If you're balling out at Grand Theft Auto, pick up Just Cause. It's different controls and different physics, and you're like, oh, I suck at this, but it's fun. Britt, I gotta pee. Can you monologue?
You know what? I'm gonna pee too.
All right. Well, let me get the timestamp. 38:08. That was good timing.
Yeah.
38. Okay, got it. But yeah, it's is life just? I used to think that I was like, man, I want to start like a podcast. I want to get a ton of money, and then I just want to go retire to an island in Hawaii and just not do anything. And now I start to look at that, and I'm like, that seems like hell. I want
a mission.
Well, yeah, I love. There's nothing worse than the moment where you complete the last mission of a game, and then it's over, and you go, fuck. You're kind of hoping there's another boss somewhere, but you realize you've unlocked every weapon. The whole map is unlocked. You now control the region. And it's like Just Cause. You're liberating Medici or Solis. And you have to unlock all the regions. You kill the dictator and all his henchmen. And it takes 200 hours. And then you're just kind of walking around like, now what? So what do?
Yeah.
You start a new game.
Mm-hmm.
You try to speed run it, or you try to do it with only this or only that. It's
And these little games are all about helping the creator figure out eternity. I think we as individuals all need to spend some time, especially during COVID, meditating on figuring out what we're supposed to be doing for this eternity. What is our personal mission here? Like you said, you're unhappy just thinking about doing nothing. The reward sounds awesome, but then you think about the amount of time you'd be spending basking in it, and you're like, wait, fuck that.
Yeah.
Something wrong there.
Yeah.
And why with that?
Yeah, it's like right now I'm at 1,974 subscribers. My goal forever was to break 1,000. Now my goal is to break 2,000. And there's like there's a funness in the terror, right? It's like I'm having on Britt, and tomorrow I don't even know who I'm having on. No, I'm having on a CIA agent tomorrow. Friday I'm having on an author. Saturday I'm having on an ex-FBI guy. And it's like you're moving these pieces, and then you're contacting new people. After you have on a guest, you're like, hey, do you know anyone from your field of work? Do you know anyone from the CIA that wants to do the podcast? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, and you're always putting it out, and you're like, which episode's going to get new subscribers? Who's going to recommend it to who? And it's just this infinite game that I'm playing, and I've set the goal so high that I'll always be busy. I want it to get bigger than Joe Rogan, and then once I do that, I want to take my money from it, and I want to push a ton of money into MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. I want to revolutionize mental health via psychedelic therapeutics. And it's like, so what have I chosen? What Rubik's Cube have I chosen in this life? I want to try to greatly increase the efficacy of mental health care in America. That's a great puzzle that it's going to take you. I probably won't complete it. But there's a puzzle where it's world peace. That's a little too big of a puzzle for me. I know I can't do that. But with greatly improving mental health care, it's just crazy enough that it might work, and that I can keep myself occupied for my whole life doing that. And there's a beauty in that. It's a game that I never get to the last mission. There's always a bigger, better mission, right? Elon Musk. What happens once you become a billionaire, 100 billionaire? What's the next best mission? Let's go to another fucking planet.
Oh, he's throwing all of his money into figuring out how to... But that was always one of my thoughts. When the creator looked out into eternity, it sees nothing. When we look out into eternity, we see something. We have something, but we can't touch it. Yeah. And so there's like a beautiful in-between between potential and actuality. So creators have the potential to do with it. We know what we do with it, but we don't know how to get there and make it happen. And I think around this time when we start making this happen, we're going to be forced to wake up as a species. This is just testing the waters. We dipped the first fragment of the first digit of our big toe in. We haven't really synced in yet. And that quest outward has always been part of something expressed by our collective consciousness. It has for hundreds of years. And now it's culminating. And we're getting to that point. And I feel like this time period is very purposeful in what's happening to us as individuals. I COVID as a blessing. People might say it's a curse, but I think we're all supposed to be inside meditating, practicing the deepest core of ourselves. You're out and about, walking around. You have a mask on all the time. You're training away that claustrophobia of space equipment over your face all the time. You got to be stuck inside, immobile. You think you're going to be able to run around all over the place when you're careening with light speed through space? No, you're going to be in a small little module or a pod. So this whole time period is about conditioning our species into being the next part of our journey is conditioning. It's one that is lower on the scales of causing freak. If we just force species to do this because it was for that purpose, you and I might freak out. You're about to be all the low-wage workers about to be replaced by robots. They're all about to be, it's about to free up humanity and just give everybody the keys to not doing something with their lives overnight. And it's got to be done in a way that the most power of choice is possible. And as our society takes the steps into what I would call a field, or we live at home, work at home, access everything through drone delivery or this or that, and everybody receives a system income just for simply existing because we've gotten to that realm of efficiency. I mean, we're going to be really having to work on ourselves and readying ourselves to take the next step that people like Musk are making for us. This is all part of like a big design that I see.
Yeah.
And I want everybody out there to see that too.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about, overcoming claustrophobia, overcoming limited access to things.
We need to become, because when we go somewhere, there's our path, how they'll interact and how they'll interact with other things that are alive. We're going to need to do that, and we're going to need to just train ourselves to think the coronavirus on everything, everywhere we go. Once we reach that stage of our journey, the average Joe is going to need to have this beaten in their head, I believe, one day.
Yeah.
I think we're all going to have the opportunity to leave planet Earth one day.
Man, it's kind of...
You said until we're allowed... We're not going to be allowed to until we've learned the appropriate way of life.
It's kind of like those tests they do out in like the desert, where they'll make those little like modular habitats, and you can go volunteer, and it's like spend 600 days in there, and you can volunteer to do it. It's like be a part of history, and what they do is like they've been doing these for I think decades, where you can go out for like 100 days or something. But they do the psychological research on like deep space travel. You can read. There are a dime a dozen. You can go read about them. Where some people crack after like 100 days. Some people can go the couple 100 days, and it's becoming like mandatory training, because they're like, what are humans going to act like on Mars? It's kind of like all those space movies where it's like, what are the astronauts? They get trained in those like gimbals where you're spinning around and you got to reconnect the wires and stuff. That might not have been an astronaut movie. That might have been Rocket Man. But the point is like, there's all this training, and is that what we're doing? And how do and it might not even just be training. It might be, it's like what George S. Patton said, never tell someone how to do something. Just tell them what you want done, and let them surprise you with their ingenuity. Or as Dale Comstock said, his dad was in the military, and he was like, my dad told me, he's like, what if you had an electrified fence, like a 10 by 10 foot fence, taller than you can scale. It's electrified barbed wire. It's got concrete under it. You can't tunnel into it. There's nothing you can jump over. And you have 10 soldiers, and you say, get into that fence. And Dale's like, he used to ask them this as a kid, and Dale would be like, helicopter. And he'd be like, no helicopters. There's like AA guns. You cut through it. He's like, you can't. It's invincible. And finally, he was like, how do you do it? And he goes, you tell your 10 soldiers, get inside that fence. That's an order. And let them figure it out, and they will figure it out through hell or high water, or they'll die trying. And maybe that's it, is what do we need? We need humans to figure out how to exist in small areas and not communicate in person. And go. So what are we doing? We're learning Zoom, right? It's almost like when someone goes blind or deaf, and you look at their brain before, and then you look at their brain 10 years later. If you go blind, the areas of your brain associated with like sound, analytic, and auditory interpretation, it grows, right? It's like if someone loses their legs, their upper body gets strong because they're using a wheelchair. I'm sure if you looked at like an overview map of like the cyber infrastructure of the world, it would be like us pre-COVID, us post-COVID, probably a big boom in like webcams, probably a big boom in stronger internet connections, right? Because it's all Zoom, it's all FaceTime, it's all what, you know, obviously the people making masks, people delivering food, it's all sorts of, you know, partitioned, glass partitions. Like you see how
a lot of it has to do with us
space travel,
like being moved over. Well, not just that, but then like the fragile, the shutdown of the old way of life. Like MIT was doing research for years on not just the availability of resource, but the ability to get it to the populace. And they realized that we are horrifically inefficient. Like how many different places would we go on planet Earth? We might go 5-6 different places, and all these 5 different places need food, water, like toilet paper, everything in between. So why can't we limit this down to 1 or 2 for every single human being? So now we have fewer places to source things like this. Like they decided that 2020, 2021, we were going to cross over a point of no return in our ability to hand out enough resources to all the different places that we would go. I mean, we were over the curve, and we needed to cut this back drastically. Else we were going to our future, you know, things were going to get a lot more drastic. So we shut down the number of places we would go. We changed the way we acted. We're going to try to just redirect how we use our resource. Remember the whole toilet paper problem?
Yeah.
Everybody that had toilet paper, but all the old toilet paper was still, you know, that's 120-story office building that had 60 bathrooms in it. All the stocks are still there. I mean, it just wasn't taken from there and redirected. So suddenly there's this disparity at the beginning when they were learning how to resource. But
no, that makes sense, right? It's kind of
it's a way to curb the number of rolls paper, as an example, that I would need to have just sort of sitting in limbo, waiting for the opportunity for my need of it. Human only needs one, you know?
Yeah.
We don't need 10 different ones waiting for us. So, it's a massive change of lifestyle that is being, I would like to call COVID death finally sort of just forcing it on us exactly what the world needs of us.
Yeah. It's kind of like airlines, like Airbus A380. That for everyone that does, the Airbus A380 is a full length double decker plane, whereas the 747 only the front of it's double decker. But they made those planes because what they wanted was these planes would only work on a couple routes. They would go from major hubs. It would be like Atlanta to London to Abu Dhabi to Sydney to Beijing, and it was like you just had a couple of these like big, just intercontinental, multi-thousand-mile trips, and that's what you would use these planes that move 800-900 people at a time. And then from there, you'd have smaller jets, and that would go from Atlanta to Charlotte or Atlanta to Dallas or whatever. These kind of state moves, but they wanted and it didn't work and ended up fucking it up. But the point is like it's more energy efficient to just have a couple of big spots where you put everything, as opposed to, right? Imagine if you had to deliver mail to every cabin in Alaska versus what they do is like you drop, like a plane will go airdrop the mail at like one place, and it's like twice a year all these people will come get their mail, right? There's a much more efficient way to do that. And that's just what COVID is. It's just like increase the efficacy of distribution.
It's for already needing onto us. Kind of. I'm not sure if there's much coincidence.
I don't think there is.
I'd like to think it is.
I don't think
it's a coincidence.
I read a quote last night, man. It said, "Coincidence is just God's way of staying anonymous."
Yeah. I mean, how many of us were waking up in the morning saying, I fucking hate my life, and continuing to do that day after day after day while dreaming of a better life deep in your soul? Well, guess what? All of that pounded and is now releasing it in you to come through to the problem that you had. I mean, it was bound to happen eventually.
Yeah.
That's how I'm seeing this.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't think the mutations are going to stop until humanity gets that. I don't think that COVID's going to go away until this like lifestyle changes that we were discussing. They're just like force and growths, and they stick.
Yeah.
COVID's not going away until those things stick.
Yeah. Right. It's right. It's,
whether it's God or man making it, or just some, self and it's not just about anything that, it's not going away until we get it.
Yeah.
Until we understand.
The beatings will continue until morale improves, right? I was thinking of that today.
Yeah.
I was listening to Tim Dillon, and he was like, got all these like variants in Australia and Africa, and he was like, what? I mean, it really kind of hit me this morning as I was looking out of my window, and I was just standing there, and I just thought, I was like, this isn't going away. This is never going away.
The spirit of humanity changes.
It's just, I remember after my brother died, and I, like a week or a month before that, I turned down my medical school acceptance, and I was like, I'm going to go brave my own new path. Then I lost my brother, and then I started getting into drugs and alcohol, and I gained a ton of weight. And I remember for years, literally for years, I would just wake up, like, do drugs and just lay in bed. And I used to talk to my girlfriend at the time, who, I have nothing but love for. She was taking care of me in my worst state. There's no point in harboring hatred. But I remember she'd just be what can we do? Like, how can we? And I just remember I always used to say, like, I just want things to go back to how they were. And it wasn't until that, like, I moved home. And then when I moved home in 2016, all I wanted to do was move back to Georgia. I was like, I just want to move back down to and then I started to realize that they were all getting married and moving away. And it finally just blossomed on my mind one day, and it said, it's not going back to how things were. Like, you and your friends are never all going to be in a classroom again. That was a period of life, and it's over. I'm never going to live in Georgia again. Like, my home's not there anymore. You're not going to be with this girl anymore. It was a thing, it existed, and it passed. Just like a flower blooming. It blooms and it dies, and that's what it is. Don't try to hold on to it. Just enjoy it for what it was. And it took me years to realize that, until finally it was like, I'm going to start this podcast. I don't know where I'm going to live. I have no idea what life holds for me. But I know for a fact that I can't go backwards, and to get lost in that hope and that illusion is just, it's no different than waking up and slamming a bottle of vodka. It's a temporary escape from the reality around you. So what you can do is, instead of going, to get rid of these shakes, I'm going to have another drink. No, you white knuckle it through the withdrawals, and then you start a new life of being healthier, trying to get sleep, blah, blah, blah. Now it's been 14 months of doing this podcast, and I don't look back anymore. It's just, I enjoy what the first 30 years of my life were for what they were. I appreciate my time at OLA, at St. Pius, at Valdosta, at the University of Georgia. I appreciate it for what it was. I appreciate the time I had with my brother for what it was. I put down Oscar last May. I enjoyed that dog for 17 years. That's how old Oscar is. Britt remembers Oscar. That's how fucking old Oscar is.
I remember when you first got Oscar.
Yeah. He was 17 and a half.
Little red boot.
Yeah. He was 17 and a half. Put him down last May.
Good God.
Yeah. But even that was like, hey, I remember I was crying when I had him put down. I remember I went to the vet, and they were like, you can't come in, like, because I didn't have a mask on. They're like, no one's allowed, and I just walked right by. I was like, I'm not, because what they were saying is like, we're like, give us your dog and like we'll put him down. And I was just like over my dead body. I held Oscar as they gave him the injection. But I remember I was crying, and the vet said, for whatever it's worth, he goes, you got 2 dogs out of 1. Most people are happy for like 8 years. He was like, I'm not saying don't be sad, but just 17 years, he's like, that's unheard of. And that helped a lot, where I was like, it's okay to like miss him, but dude, you got 17 years, like, enjoy it for what it was. And with that, to tie that all into COVID, and there may be people saying, don't give into it, it's all a globalist reset plan, in which case it might be, and we got to fight the globalists, whatever, it's been going on for thousands of years, whatever. But like, it's very easy for me to say I don't have kids, I don't have a wife, I don't have a job that threw me on the street, and now I rely on checks from the government. Like I'm very blessed that I've created this thing where I don't need to interact with the world to do this podcast. There can be COVID, there could be flooding in New York. It doesn't affect me. I still put out the same shitty episodes every day, and people for whatever reason watch it. But like maybe that is kind of what's in store, is like stop looking back. It's the beatings will continue until morale improves. It's the variations will continue until you settle Mars. Sorry, I know I just went on like a 10-minute rant, Britt, but
no, it's all good. You always have a lot to come back with. I mean, it's all part of our destiny to figure out what's inside ourselves and what's out in the universe, and the use of it. And, find an eternity that's worthwhile. Not just find one where you wake up every day, say, I hate this life, and then wish it away. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work like that for much longer. I don't think. I mean, I'm fighting again to make it work. Yeah. I'm maybe blue at all sorts of crazy ideas, crazy dreams about something of no authority. It's beyond me.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying. And I'm going to keep trying until I die.
Yeah.
Or until it's
yeah.
I mean, I dream about going to other stars. I dream about being one of these guys like Musk.
Fuck
not for the sake of it, not for the sake of what he has, but for the doing.
Yeah.
And
so do I.
I want to be a part of this expansion, this journey.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to plan it. I'm playing my part. As small and crazy and delusional as it is, I'm going to try. But because it's something new. It's something nobody else has tried before.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. You are unique. Your own self. So at least try one thing that nobody has ever tried before. Even if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. No, that's you hit the nail on the head. Even if it's like my own little like delusional thing, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
When I say I'm going to have the biggest podcast in the world, I think it's going to take me a decade. And then I say, and after that, I'm going to become a billionaire. And then after that, I'm going to change mental health through LSD and psilocybin. People look at me and they're like, you're not wrapped too tight. But the way I look at it is like, yeah, it's all delusion and it sounds insane. But, it's kind of like when they say it's like I don't know, what's an example? When you create a Gmail account, you automatically create a YouTube account. But you can also create a YouTube account without having a Gmail. So it's a Venn diagram, right? Everyone that has a Gmail has a YouTube, but not everyone that has a YouTube has a Gmail. So like my logic is like, yeah, it's delusional, but I think anyone that's ever accomplished truly great things in humanity are delusional. Not everyone that's delusional creates great things. But a Steve Jobs and an Elon Musk, they don't sit there going, well, I just want a nice little home, a little 2-story, a little turn of the century house. No, they're like, I'm going to change the fucking world with flat screen phones and self-landing rockets. And a lot of them don't do that, and they end up dead face down in a ditch. But some of them do create it, and they change the world. So yeah. I look upon it with a smile and acceptance when I'm like, yeah, I've got my own little bubble of delusion. I'm going to help go to different stars. I don't care if people think that's crazy.
At one point, even the theory of psychologically aiding another individual was considered delusional. I mean, if you went back to the 1400s, they'd tell you it's all spiritual and demons and shit, and you're crazy. I mean, but now the roles reversed.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you feel the way you felt for a reason, and everybody that's been inspired to do something that's changed the world has felt so for a reason. I mean, big or small. And they're all just mirrors of the Creator trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I wish everybody would feel that and feel that importance. And then you kind of have a mission that you can't let down, and suddenly you have a responsibility. Yeah. Suddenly you enter into what I call like the contract of civilization. You force yourself to become strong so that you can multiply your strengths and give them to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And keep that chain up, and you protect them. You create new tools, new means of helping people help themselves, live up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's what the same way our ancestors were inspired, and I hope that everybody out gets that and just holds it in their heart and asks the Creator what can they do to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Rather than giving in the thoughts of the negativity and the thoughts of all the thoughts that I guess are inspiring the need to change.
Yeah.
But change from continuing to think that the types of thoughts that inspire change and become the change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because there is a certain comfort in like negativity, where it's like it's not gonna work. Podcast isn't gonna work. Just go get a job, dude. Just go get a job. Just be happy with what you have. It's fun to dream, but look, you're not Joe Rogan. Just go. And like, there's a comfort in it's because when you fail at something or when you quit, there's a certainty because you now know it's over. You quit and you get that. The worst part about like taking on a dream is the uncertainty. You don't know when it's going to work, and by quitting you get the certainty of knowing that it's over. So it's not even really that you wanted success or failure, you kind of just wanted certainty. Well then just hold out, you know, because it sounds like such a cheesy like motivational poster, but I mean truly the way I look at it is like as long as you don't give up, there's no such thing as failure, because failure is like you actively quit. If you just never give up, then you'll eventually, and if you don't succeed, then that will be because you died, in which case you won't be here to experience failure. And
you never what the smallest minutiae in your experiences could really mean in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, just the smallest details could become an incredibly important inspiration.
Yeah.
And nothing in your experience is waste. Nothing in your experience is, you know, you're ultimately the only one who can make that decision.
Yeah.
And never doubt that there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
Everything you learned, everything that you felt. And always try to find the good reason behind it.
Fuck yeah. Britt, that was a beautiful note. I think we should wrap it up on that note.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I'm happy to share some more with you personally, talk more personally. I like to show you what I'm working on. I don't want to put it up on YouTube, but...
All right, well, hold on. Let me stop recording.
Yeah.
Let me stop recording on here. All right, well, this one's over. Britt O'Callaghan, thank you for coming on, for everybody watching. And now Britt and I don't know what I'm about to say, but I'm going to stop recording in 3, 2...